It's not time for a toast just yet, old friend. The day will come when our mission is complete.
Ever since the release of Street Fighter V, Charlie Nash has stolen the spotlight from the rest of the cast. However, with the recent announcement of the return of Street Fighter veteran Guile, Brainal would love to take the opportunity to explore the backstories of these two brothers-in-arms. We would be honored if you join us in the very first episode of Brainal Backstories. Let's get this shit started. Before we continue on, I have a quick disclaimer. All of the information presented in this video came straight from the Street Fighter games themselves, as well as the Street Fighter World Warrior Encyclopedia. That being said, Capcom themselves had retconned certain story endings from some of the games. So I've done my best as far as to try and compile the most relevant information that was actually presented in Street Fighter V and reconcile that information from some of the particular endings from the previous games. That said, let's continue. Guile and Charlie, Charlie and Guile. The bromance between these two is so strong that even the friendship between Ryu and Ken is put to shame. Both served as lieutenants in the US Air Force and even trained together in martial arts. In fact, Charlie was Guile's mentor, which explains why they have similar moves such as the classic Sonic Boom and Flash Kick. But even after all the missions that they've done together, Charlie started to suspect that there was some corruption in the Air Force, so he took it upon himself to do some investigating. Which brings us to the events of the Street Fighter Alpha era. Now, even though the Street Fighter Alpha games are second in line in the canonical order of the Street Fighter franchise behind the original Street Fighter game, they do mark the debut of not just Charlie, but Guile in the story. Charlie scours the earth fighting warrior after warrior, investigating who's behind the corruption within the Air Force. He then encounters who we know today as Cammy, but back then was actually known as Killer B. Killer B was a brainwashed assassin and subordinate of M. Bison who was running the Empire of Shadaloo. Upon defeating Killer B, Charlie then realized that it was Shadaloo itself that was behind the corruption in the Air Force. Resuming his investigation, Charlie actually went missing in action. Enter Guile. Guile receives a transmission that Charlie went missing, so of course he's gonna go find him and try and rescue him and see what's going on. And then, of course, Guile has to scour the earth, beating ass after ass after ass after ass, trying to find Charlie, but then he encounters Chun-Li. Now, at this point, Chun-Li was an Interpol agent, and I think she still is in Street Fighter V, actually. Chun-Li understands that Guile's trying to stop Charlie from hurting himself going after M. Bison, and Guile understands that Chun-Li understands what Guile's trying to do. Of course, Guile's not going to stop because he's a badass mofo. So naturally, they fight. Guile wins, Chun-Li loses, Guile continues on. And of course, who does Guile finally catch up to? Charlie. Guile pleads Charlie to stop. Charlie says no. Charlie pleads Guile to let him go. Guile says no. So of course, what do? They fight. It's a fucking Street Fighter game. Of course they're gonna fucking fight. And even though Charlie is Guile's senior, Guile comes out on top. But thankfully, they both agree to infiltrate the Shadaloo base together, and with the help of Chun-Li, they locate the Psycho Drive. But just before the explosives are about to go off, guess who shows up? Master Bison himself, almighty and shit. M. Bison lines up an attack trying to take Guile down, but who of course sacrifices himself to save Guile? His best bro, Charlie. Charlie shouts to Guile to get the fuck out of this base and don't worry about him. Guile has no choice but to leave. Shit. Guile was able to save his own ass, but then when he turns around, what does he see? He sees a huge explosion. The Shadaloo base actually exploded, and supposedly M. Bison's dead. And meanwhile, Guile's like, Charlie, no! So Guile thinks that Charlie died, and why wouldn't he? Of course he would think he's dead. But then we learn from a flashback from Street Fighter V that what actually happened was Charlie survived, and so does M. Bison. They actually make it out, and they fight. Charlie had M. Bison pinned down, calls in a rescue helicopter not to just take Charlie out, but also to arrest M. Bison. So what do you think happened? Of course Charlie was right about the corruption. So his own rescue helicopter shoots Charlie down. Can you imagine that shit? Fuck. Even though they never recover Charlie's body, Guile assumes Charlie's dead and places a grave for the memorial of Charlie. Which leads us to the event of Street Fighter II World Warrior. Guile becomes obsessed with revenge, and then he hears that M. Bison's still alive. So what does he do? He tracks that motherfucker down, scouring the world, beating ass after ass after ass after ass, also beating some cars down, that's just straight up vandalism, and finally tracks down M. Bison. Finally beats him, and he grabs M. Bison's like, M. Bison, do you remember me? You remember Charlie? And M. Bison says back to Guile straight in his face, yeah, I remember you and Charlie. I remember you and Charlie really hard. Guile's like, I'm gonna kill you now, motherfucker. And then Bison's like, and kill me now, motherfucker. And right before Guile was about to kill him, guess who comes in? Guile's wife and daughter. I bet you didn't even fucking know that he had a wife and daughter this whole time. That's how much he cared about Charlie. He cared more about Charlie than he did his own wife and daughter. What the fuck? And get this, his wife and daughter are in the room. Apparently he'd even recognize his own daughter. I guess that's how long he's been away. I think his daughter's name is what, Amy? And his wife's name is Jane? Or the other way around, but either way. Now keep in mind, Guile had the opportunity to kill M. Bison, but his wife and daughter were able to talk him down and prevent him from doing so. Which means everything that happens with M. Bison after this point, with Shadaloo, with SIN, with Seth, and maybe with the Illuminati, I'll get to them later, all of that is Guile's wife and daughter's fault. That's the most important thing. It's their fault. But I digress. After all said and done, Guile just decides to settle down. Even though M. Bison's still alive, rebuilding his empire, he settles down with his wife and daughter. Years go by, which brings us to the next game in the canonical order, which is Street Fighter IV. Now the main bad guy of Street Fighter IV is Seth, who's in charge of SIN, which is an offshoot of Shadaloo. And of course, M. Bison still being alive is up to his shenanigans again, Guile's wife and daughter's fault. Guile takes it upon himself to stop M. Bison, and after him, to also stop Seth in Street Fighter IV. And of course, Guile succeeds in stopping Seth as well. So it seems like all is good in the world, and again, Guile has to visit Charlie's grave because he still is obsessed, even though he doesn't want to admit it. Which now brings us to the events of Street Fighter V. And after all of this remorse, after all of this obsessing, after all of this family neglect, guess who decides to show his ugly motherfucking face? Charlie motherfucking Nash. Look at his janky ass face. Look at that shit. He looks like he ripped somebody's face off of their face and put that person's face on his face. It's like a face sandwich. It's crazy. Now, unbeknownst to me, because I never played Street Fighter III Third Strike, which happens after Street Fighter V in the storyline, there are two characters in what's known as the Secret Society, according to the Street Fighter World Warrior Encyclopedia. Now, the Secret Society has a symbol that is extremely reminiscent of the Illuminati. So I've heard people refer to the group as Illuminati, so I'm going to call them the Illuminati. I agree with that. But the two characters of Street Fighter III Third Strike, one is a boss of that game, which is Guile, and the other one is his little brother, Urien. Now Urien, I'll do a separate video on later because he will be one of the characters to be released in the first wave of DLC characters for Street Fighter V. But if you notice, Jill and Urien from the Illuminati are sporting the same oval on their forehead as our boy Nash over here. So the obvious theory there is that maybe the Illuminati brought him back to life, so he probably was dead or something. Who knows? We'll see. With the admittedly bare-bones story mode that launched with Street Fighter V, Charlie's talking to a Russian lady. Now, she seems to be an agent of some sort, maybe for the KGB, I don't really know, but she's talking with Charlie, trying to help Charlie sort through all the crap that he's going through now that he's back. So in this preliminary story mode, there are really only two fights that Charlie goes through, or I should say Nash goes through. The first one is a flashback fight with M. Bison where we actually get some clarification as to what happened with him at the end of Street Fighter Alpha. And then, upon the suggestion of the Russian lady, he goes sightseeing on vacation in India. And of course, in the streets of India, he runs into some teenage punk Shadaloo kid, and then guess who follows after that? Fong, which is a new character in Street Fighter V, which is pretty cool. He's a pretty cool guy. Crazy, but cool. But then, I mean, that doesn't really explain much. But then Charlie, kicks his ass. But then, one thing I noticed is, and this is what I love about this Nash, this Nash don't give no fucks. He really does not. He's filled with nothing but contempt and rage towards, I'm guessing, M. Bison or whatever. And if you notice, when he does his super, his face, when he is tearing into his opponent, I've never seen a face so filled with anger than his. And I love every second of it. Which leads us to the announcement that we had last week, where Guile is coming back. Now, hopefully this video helped you understand the motivations of both Charlie and Guile. I'm very curious to see how Guile's going to fit into the mix now, because from what I understand, with the arrival of Guile, this should be the first time they come face-to-face, or face-to-face sandwich, since Street Fighter Alpha. You know, there's a lot of crap that happened in between then and now. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to tackle this, and I hope in the story mode coming out this summer, they're going to offer a more cinematic approach that's more robust. And I've seen the trailer. Even though I didn't see Guile in there from what I've noticed, it looks amazing. So I'm very excited about that. Anyway, everyone, that should catch you all up to speed when it comes to Guile and Nash. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is the first time we've done Brainal Backstories, and expect us to do more of these videos, specifically to start off with these DLC characters coming out, as well as other games when they come out too. We might do some retrospectives or whatever. But if you do have any suggestions or whatever, please feel free to comment. We would love it if you like the video. If you subscribe, we'd really appreciate that. That'd be fantastic. And if you are a Street Fighter fan, just like me and just like Frozen, then this is a great time for all of us, because I'm enjoying the crap out of this game. And as tongue-in-cheek as this video was, Guile was one of my favorite characters of all time. And even though nowadays my favorite character is another person I'll get to another time, but either way, I am greatly looking forward to playing him in Street Fighter V and see how he controls. So anyway, everybody take care, and if you want to hear some interesting factoids about Guile and Charlie, stay tuned after the credits. Take care, everyone. This is Jeppy Connell on behalf of Brainal.net. Peace! Fact number 1. Charlie has 20/20 vision. His glasses are completely cosmetic. Fact number 2. Guile and Ken are actually related to each other. They are brothers-in-law. Ken's wife, Eliza, and Guile's wife, Julia, are actually sisters. Fact number 3. Guile has been wearing Charlie's dog tags ever since Charlie's disappearance from Street Fighter Alpha. Fact number 4. In the events of the Street Fighter Alpha era, upon infiltrating the Shadaloo base, Charlie stumbled across the unconscious body of Abel, who is a character from Street Fighter 4, and rescued him from a potential fire. If you have any more factoids that I forgot, leave in the comments below. We'd appreciate that. Later!